I didn't have anything against it, but I just thought I want to carve my own path and find what I want to do. And it was the thing that I was groomed for without any of us realizing it, my family included. I grew up on sets. My parents had acting classes my whole life that I went to.
Better.
There's actually a clip going around, I don't know if you've seen it on Instagram, where you two are in the street and it's where you really kiss for the first time, and she's, sort of showing you, like pulling you into her and showing you how to embrace her.
Yeah.
And people are loving that.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Seeing the collaborative effort.
I don't think people realize how involved she was in this movie. And she's a producer on the film.
Adapting it and growing it and expanding on it. But Colleen was incredible in saying, like, okay, the book is one thing and the movie also is another thing. And we have to make sure that we're not just making a replica of the book if it isn't always the best and most authentic choice for the moment. And I think because of that, it's a very true adaptation of the book. Like, it is very, very, very true to the book, and in so many ways. And it also, at the same time, can have an authenticity and a life to it that is even outside of the book slightly, because everybody came to it given the authorship to bring the most honest performance and the most honest interpretation and the most honest pieces of themselves as storytellers to the film.
Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I absolutely love this topic and I'm so invested in it. I just spent nearly 6 hours digging through court records, legal documents, and even chatting with ChatGPT to get its take. Does anyone else use ChatGPT just to gain insight? I still do a ton of research myself, but I love using it to ask specific questions on topics I might not be super familiar with. Besides that, I also spent a lot of time reading through statements from all the different parties involved in these lawsuits. Yesterday, we covered some of the major issues surrounding Blake Lively, like the fact that she's not an employee of Wayfair. Because she isn't technically an employee and instead used a loan-out agency under contract, she really doesn't have solid grounds to sue, unless there was a clear contract violation. All the major concerns were already addressed in the agreement they signed, which included 17 protections. She can't just go back now and claim she was harassed, and that nothing was done when the same document she signed shows that they took the necessary steps to ensure her comfort. But as I was going through these different statements, I noticed a few really interesting things. One of them was, Blake Lively's claims in her 17-point agreement largely focused on CO. I'm not sure if you're aware, but by 2023, life had pretty much returned to normal. We live in a world now where CO just exists. It's an unfortunate reality we all have to deal with. It's kind of like a tougher version of the flu. I've had it 3 times, and I absolutely hate it every time. But in 2023, there were no legal requirements for Wayfair to enforce CO precautions on set. What's ironic is that Blake made a huge deal about COVID safety. Yet all spring, she was at Taylor Swift concerts and even at Wrexham in March 2023, packed into a stadium watching a soccer match without a mask. She was in London at the Wrexham Stadium just days before claiming she was exposed to CO on set. The reality is, she could have caught it anywhere, so blaming Wayfair is a complete exaggeration. It's just another one of her tactics to push, an issue that she wasn't even following in her own life. In her complaint, Blake also claims that Sony and Wayfair signed this 17-point writer agreement, but the truth is, Sony never signed anything. They weren't the ones producing the film, they were only distributing it. Since they had no direct contract with Blake, there was no reason for them to sign anything. But what I found really interesting was Sony's response to her demands. It's pretty clear they weren't buying into it. In November 2023, on my birthday, funnily enough, an email was sent that basically showed Sony's stance. It said, "Took a look at this following our conversation, and no changes in mind from what we discussed last evening. Items 1 through 10, 15, and 17 are basically just, yes, of course." Interestingly, I'm surprised you don't already have a negotiated writer in place, given the subject matter and content of the book. Or am I misinterpreting her comment? Then, regarding items 11 through 13, they said they needed more details to understand what she was trying to accomplish. The tone was professional, but it was obvious they were skeptical of her demands. The studio representatives were questioning why Blake Lively was adding certain details to her list of demands. Was she trying to monitor professionalism on set? Did she want more control over the production? Was she planning to analyze people's behavior to later accuse them of wrongdoing? It raised eyebrows. For example, regarding numbers 11 through 13, she wanted to bring in Todd Black, a highly accomplished producer with 52 film credits. The issue? He was extremely busy. The film was already well into production, and bringing him in at that stage would not only complicate things, but also drive up costs. It was a logistical nightmare that Wayfair would have to pay for out of pocket. Many of Blake's demands significantly increased the film's budget and caused delays in production. The studio noted how interesting it was that she wanted auditions and more decision-making power over who was on set. One of the biggest hurdles she now faces in her lawsuit is proving that her complaints about Wayfair were legitimate and not just a means to gain creative control. The timing of her accusations aligns suspiciously with her push for more authority, making it appear as though she was leveraging harassment claims to secure more influence over the film. Before these demands, Blake had no authority over certain aspects of the production. If the studio said no, she had to accept it. But once the contract was signed and her new protections were in place, she no longer had to take no for an answer. It became evident that she was using this agreement to gain power over the project in ways and that's going to be a tough hurdle for her to clear because a jury could easily look at the timeline and question the validity of her claims. The timing just doesn't add up. So I asked ChatGPT about this, and it pointed out that sexual harassment is a serious legal issue. Using it as a tool for creative control would raise serious ethical and legal concerns. If it were proven that the allegations were exaggerated or manipulated for personal gain, it would likely backfire. False accusations could undermine the credibility of real victims, weaken trust in legitimate cases, and even bring legal consequences to those making baseless claims. Blake Lively's case is going to face a tough battle, particularly regarding the sexual harassment allegations. To win, she would have to present undeniable evidence proving that the harassment was so extreme, so hostile, and so persistent that it made her feel humiliated and unable to continue working. But here's the problem. She finished filming. The production was completed, the team met, discussed concerns, and agreed on protections. Once those protections were in place, filming continued without any reported incidents. After that, the movie was promoted, released, and turned out to be financially successful. If Blake is arguing that the harassment made it impossible for her to work, it contradicts the reality that she completed the project without any interruptions. Wayfair, Justin, and Jamie followed the necessary legal steps to ensure she felt safe and supported. At this point, it's difficult to argue that the harassment claims had any lasting impact on her ability to do her job. The timeline itself works against her, making it even harder to prove her case. She actively took charge of the editing process, handled all the marketing, and embarked on a major promotional tour, even if she stumbled through it and made some questionable remarks that made her look unprofessional. She even downplayed domestic violence in interviews, which was a major misstep. But despite all that, the film was released, it was marketed successfully, and she appeared alongside her cast and crew for press events. She participated in interviews, engaged with the media, and ultimately, the movie made a significant amount of money. Given all that, she can't realistically argue that she was working in a hostile environment for months on end. From the end of the strike in June all the way to December of 2024, there were no public complaints from her about workplace hostility. She also can't claim that her allegations of sexual harassment were ignored because she never followed the proper reporting procedures. If her contract required her to go through internal dispute resolution before taking legal action, failing to do so weakens her entire case. She never officially filed an HR complaint, didn't involve the union, and chose to skip the required steps to address the issue internally. On top of that, she refused a formal investigation by the California Civil Rights Department. She filed a complaint, but then waived the option for an inquiry. Instead of taking the appropriate steps, she jumped straight to a lawsuit. If she never attempted to resolve the issue through proper channels, the company can argue that she never gave them a chance to address her concerns. They will also argue that the behavior she described doesn't meet the legal threshold for sexual harassment. A rational juror is unlikely to believe her claims meet the criteria for severe or pervasive harassment. There's no evidence of quid pro quo. She was never pressured into sexual favors in exchange for professional gain. Plus, she had protective measures in place throughout production, which contradicts the idea of a hostile work environment. Beyond that, she lacks a strong legal standing to sue. One of the company's key defenses will be that they did nothing to harm her and they fulfilled every contractual obligation they had with her and her production company. The film was a success. It was released, promoted, and made a solid profit. Blake Lively was paid, and once her contract ended, the studio had no further legal obligation to her. However, she's now basing her case on claims of retaliation, arguing that she was harmed due to a supposed campaign against her. The problem is, proving that will be extremely difficult. She would have to show that the backlash wasn't just an organic reaction from the public after the film's release, but something deliberately orchestrated against her. Her argument suggests that Justin Baldoni manipulated public perception by making people believe she wasn't marketing the film properly, that she was more focused on self-promotion, and that he secretly influenced content creators to make videos about it without leaving any trace. But without solid proof, that claim remains pure speculation. The biggest hurdle for her is that she's a public figure. As a celebrity promoting a highly controversial book-turned-movie, she was already under scrutiny. People naturally had strong opinions about her in the project, and some already disliked her before any alleged interference. Since she was making public appearances and speaking on the record, it's hard to argue that all the criticism she faced came from an orchestrated campaign rather than the public's genuine reaction to her own words and actions. Plus, Justin Baldoni has outright denied any involvement, and there's no clear evidence suggesting he had any reason to sabotage his own film. His studio had the most at stake in the movie's success, and harming Blake's reputation would only hurt the project. Smearing her during promotion would have been counterproductive. It would have meant risking the film's performance and his studio's profits. To complicate matters further, Baldoni's longtime publicist, Jennifer Ale, actually filed a counter lawsuit against Stephanie Jones, Blake's close associate, accusing her of serious misconduct. Ale claims she was falsely imprisoned when her phone was taken, her laptop was searched without permission, and her private data was handed over to Blake, all without a legal warrant. She also revealed that Melissa Nathan was brought in as damage control because just before the film's premiere, people online were already questioning Baldoni's absence from the promotional campaign. Justin Baldoni wasn't involved in the group press junkets. He handled his own promotion separately, and as the premiere approached, it became clear that he would be distanced from the rest of the cast. That's why Melissa Nathan was brought in, to protect him, safeguard Wayfair's reputation, and handle any potential crises. Reports had already surfaced that people were circulating negative stories about Justin, his faith, and claims that he had made Blake uncomfortable on set. But this wasn't about attacking Blake. It was about ensuring he and the film were defended from damaging narratives, and that press coverage stayed focused on the movie rather than the personal conflict between him and Blake. When you view it through that lens, it makes sense. The goal wasn't to smear Blake, but to manage a situation that was spiraling. But Blake, unwilling to acknowledge any missteps on her part, is now pushing claims for which she has no strong legal foundation. She's attempting to sue despite lacking clear standing and without presenting claims that hold up under legal scrutiny. If you take emotion out of the equation and focus solely on the facts, it becomes a question of credibility. Can she back up what she's saying? Is there concrete evidence? So far, she hasn't presented proof, nor has she established a clear motive for Justin to retaliate against her in the first place. Another major issue in her case is that she waived her claims earlier, which may be the most damaging factor against her. She was an active participant in the film. She helped promote it, took part in PR campaigns she and her husband orchestrated, and directly benefited from its success. The film made money, lots of it, and she profited as well. Only now, after all of that, is she suing, claiming she suffered damages? That contradiction could seriously undermine her case. They're going to argue that she willingly participated in the PR campaign and that she personally crafted the strategy. She chose her own words, controlled her messaging, and actively engaged in every aspect of promotion. If she directly benefited from the very thing she's now suing over, it becomes extremely difficult to convince a jury to take her side. Imagine saying, hey, I made $4 million on this film, but I made some mistakes during promotion, and now I want more money. That argument is going to be tough to sell in court. Another major issue is the waiver of claims in her contract. It required her to take immediate action if she experienced retaliation, But instead, she waited 4 months after the film's promotional period ended before filing her lawsuit, just in time for her next project to be announced. That timing raises questions about her true motivations. It looks like she had a strong incentive to reshape her public image before her new film came out. What better way to regain public sympathy and repair her reputation than by positioning herself as a victim? It's a powerful way to shift the narrative and rally support from people who may have previously criticized her, but the real challenge isn't just proving harassment, it's overcoming the legal hurdles stacked against her. The facts matter, but so does her behavior throughout this process. There are also 2 other major concerns. First, she has what legal experts call unclean hands, meaning she's engaged in conduct that could be seen as immoral or unethical. Some claim her actions resemble extortion, using complaints not just to seek justice, but as a way to gain control over the film and secure the creative authority she wanted. Then there's the issue of unjust enrichment. If she's attempting to profit from false claims and extract more money from a project that was already wildly successful, that severely weakens her case. Consider this. She's had other films with well-documented problems on set, like the rhythm section, but she never sued those producers. Why? Likely because that movie flopped and there was no financial gain in pursuing a lawsuit. But in this case, the film grossed $350 million and could have a sequel in the works. That gives her a clear incentive to tarnish Justin Baldoni's reputation, which could give her leverage in the industry or even financial benefits down the line. She believes she wasn't paid enough and that all the extra work she put in went unrewarded. Her underlying argument is that because she voluntarily took on additional responsibilities without extra pay, she now deserves more money. But how does she get around the issue of unjust enrichment? How does she overcome the problem of having unclean hands? And most importantly, how does she prove significant acts of retaliation when she was already a public figure, constantly in the spotlight? That's a tough challenge, and legally, she doesn't seem to have the standing to sue. Right now, the case is moving forward, but if this actually goes to a jury, it's hard to imagine her winning. And that's not just because of what's in her complaint, but because of the simple fact that there isn't enough solid evidence to back up her claims. There's a lot of hearsay, a lot of speculation, and a lot of credibility concerns surrounding her. She might argue that people are deliberately trying to destroy her credibility to discredit her accusations, but the reality is, her credibility issues existed long before this case. That's a huge obstacle to overcome. This is why her legal opponents are so confident. As you go through the responses to her claims, one thing becomes clear. They are denying almost everything. They deny her allegations. They reject her version of events. They say she was never an employee. They insist there was no sexual harassment. They argue she was never mistreated, and that, if anything, they went out of their way to accommodate her every request. If they did all of that for her, why would they suddenly turn around and smear her at the very end? They wouldn't. That's exactly what Justin Baldoni and Wayfair's official responses reveal. Their statements are direct, firm, and consistent, which makes their case stronger. At this point, the real question is whether she has any concrete evidence to support her claims. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching!